Hi everybody, it's Andrea again from the Town of Wytheville Department of Museums, and we are here at the Loom House on the front porch at the Homestead Museum here in Wytheville for another virtual learning experience. And today we are going to be talking about churning butter. And we're talking about churning butter here on the porch because that is probably one of the most common places where churning butter would have been done for the early settlers here in Southwest Virginia. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the different tools that were used for churning butter, and then I'm going to show you how you can churn some butter at home if you would like to give it a try. So down here I have some of the tools for churning butter. Of course, the most important thing is the churn. And this is a real small churn. Churns can range in size from small like this one to something that's probably about waist high on me. A lot of times the settlers would have been churning a lot of cream at the same time to make big batches of butter that would last for quite a while. But so we have our churn here. We've got a bowl and a paddle here, and also a mold, and we're going to talk about all of those different things as we go through the process of churning the butter. So let's talk about the different parts of the churn. So you have the big part on the bottom is the canister, and then the other two parts here, you have a lid for the canister, and it's not connected, moves around on this long stick that's got a dasher on the bottom, and the dasher is what you use to churn up the cream that we're going to put inside of our canister here. So how we make butter is just by using heavy cream. And so if you want to do it at home, all you need is heavy cream. And for people churning butter long ago, they would have used cream from their milked cows. So after you milk the cows, you would put the milk into a shallow pan and let it set overnight. And overnight, all of the cream, which is weighs less than the milk, rises to the top, and then you would skim the cream off of the milk. So then you're left with your cream and your skimmed milk. So those are the two different things that you would get from milking a cow. And the cream is what can go right here into the churn to make the butter. And once you put that inside, all that it takes is a little bit of elbow grease, a little bit of muscle. So if you're going to make butter, I hope you brought your muscles with you. And in the old churn here, we just move the dasher up and down. Up and down, lots and lots of times. And the dasher here on the bottom, it has all these holes in it. Sometimes you might see one that's just got a cross on the bottom. And basically it just creates a lot of places for that cream to travel through. And what happens is the cream gets really sloshed up. It gets really agitated and really frothy and bubbly. And as you continue to churn, what happens is the molecules of the cream begin to separate. And so all of the molecules that are the fat molecules start to stick together, and they separate from the liquid molecules, which become separated. So it takes, in good weather, about 30 minutes, maybe 20 to 30 minutes to churn butter. And if it gets, at that point, you would take the butter out, and as I show you later, we'll go through the next steps. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how you can churn butter at home. And I'm not going to churn it in the churn here because I want you to see what you can use. And this is also what we would use if we were coming to your classrooms right now to churn butter. So this is just a little container, and it's got, all that's inside is heavy cream. And like I said, that's all you need. And all you have to do is start shaking. And you shake and shake and shake, and this is a really great family activity because you can pass the pitcher around and everyone can take turns shaking, and you can go around and around the circle until you finally get your butter. So I'm going to show you how that's going to happen. I'm going to keep shaking and we'll see what happens in a little while. Alright, so we're still shaking here, and I can start to hear it splashing around a little bit, and it's really close to finishing. So it's really starting to splash around a lot inside, and the more I shake, the more that those fat molecules are going to stick together, and what we're going to be left with is a ball of butter and then the liquid buttermilk. Alright, I'm going to take a peek in here now and see what it looks like. I'm going to keep going a little farther because it still looks a little bit like tiny little chunks of butter. So if I keep going, they're gonna stick together even more. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to pour off a little bit of the liquid here into a small bowl. And that there is buttermilk. It's not as thick as the buttermilk you might buy directly from the store, but it still has that same acidity that buttermilk has, and so you can use this, and the early settlers would have used this. It's not anything that would have been wasted, so it can be used to make biscuits, cookies. It can be, you can drink it just like this. So that's the buttermilk there, and then inside the container here we have the butter. So I'm going to go ahead and shake that out here into my larger bowl. Today it's kind of a nice warm day. It's in the 60s probably, and this is a really good temperature for making butter. If it gets a lot colder or a lot hotter, it will take a lot longer for the butter to come. So you can see we have the butter there in the bowl. I've got the butter paddle, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to press with the butter paddle, and it's going to continue to press those fat molecules together and squeeze out even more of the liquid buttermilk. I'm going to pour that off. I'm going to continue doing this, pressing the butter, getting some more buttermilk out there. And now we want to make sure that all of the buttermilk gets out of the butter, because buttermilk spoils very quickly. And if we leave any buttermilk in the butter, then the butter is also going to spoil very quickly. So I'm going to go through a process called washing the butter. And I'm just going to take some clean water, pour it on top of the butter. And it doesn't really mix with the butter, because at this point the butter is just, as I said, it's all those fat molecules that have joined together, and it's not going to mix with the water at all. So as we just press the water kind of latches on to any of that liquid that's left there in the butter, and as it latches on and I press, it squeezes it out even more. So I would continue to do that until the water runs clear. Now at this point, once that water is running clear, you can eat the butter as is. You can use it for baking. If you're going to use butter for baking, you don't want to add salt to it, so you just leave it as is there. You can add salt to it. We think of adding salt to butter as something for flavor, but long ago people would have added salt to the butter as a preservative. So adding more salt to butter, it does change the flavor, but it also makes the butter last longer. And actually you could even pickle the butter by putting it in a brine solution, and if you do that, sometimes butter can last up to a year unrefrigerated. So that's something that may have been done long ago too, to keep that butter lasting for a really long time. This is a really small batch of butter. The early settlers would have been churning a lot more cream at a time to make a lot bigger batches of butter. I have here a butter mold, and this is something where the butter could be packed into, and then as you can see it has a handle, and then you just push it and it will pop the butter out. But the mold also has a pattern on it, and so if families were selling their butter, they would have a specific mold carved that was particular to their family, so that people would know which family or who they were purchasing their butter from, and could return and make sure they got the same kind. Butter could also be colored. Now our butter here turned out pretty yellow, and the color of butter is dependent upon the diet of the cow that produces the milk. So the more straw that a cow would eat, the lighter colored and almost white the butter would turn out, whereas if it was the cow was eating more grass, the butter would turn out a lot more yellow. And at times it was very fashionable to have yellow, very yellow butter. If people wanted their butter to look more yellow, they could actually color it with things like carrot juice. So we've talked a lot about using different natural sources for dyes, and that's something that could have even been used for butter. So if you'd like, I invite you to try making your own butter at home. You might learn that there's nothing that tastes quite as delicious as homemade butter on bread, and we hope that you enjoy your adventure in trying to make butter, that you can all participate in it, and we'll see you for our next virtual learning experience.